I want to end on a fun little thing and bring you back into my realm of what I've been dealing with as far as card games go for the last little bit. And you tried Marvel Snap a little bit, but it's been a while since you played it. When was the last time you actually played it?
The last time I played Marvel Snap, yeah, I think it was like a year ago.
Okay.
When I played it, I think this was, so you maybe be able to place it in a timeline better.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I last played, Galactus was broken.
Okay.
And like he just received like his first nerf or something, and I think he was still broken.
Where he went from a 6'3" to a 6'2"? I imagine it was that one.
I think it was that, yeah.
Basically, it didn't change anything. It actually made him better because the deck at the time cared about not having priority. Because you want to be able to basically have Galactus go off, trigger, blow up everything, and then you want to be able to go ahead and play Null and Death, which you assume Death would be free at this point, on the last turn of the game, but you don't want priority because if you have your stuff flipped first, then your opponent can play Shang-Chi,
Wait, but why
kill your
does it
stuff,
give
and
you
win.
less priority? Because you have less power or something?
Correct.
Is it like
Having
in the
less
last
power.
round, the person with the most power in play gets priority last?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, so if you have priority, your stuff flips first. So old Galactus did not want priority because it didn't want their stuff to flip first in the last turn. It wanted to play big cards that could be killed by Shang-Chi. And if Galactus players had priority, their Death, their Null would flip up, and then your opponent just goes, I Shang-Chi, because I don't have priority, and I kill your things.
Ah, okay, yeah. And now their card would flip first, and then sort of its ETB has already gone off, and then your Death flips, and then it's safe.
Right.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because I think it's kind of fun, and this is actually a good segue in the first card, because you have a little experience with it. You didn't play a whole lot. You got partway into Series 3, I believe, but you didn't become Series 3 complete. You didn't finish the collection or like that. You decided the game wasn't for you. Well, that's perfect, because that means you've been removed from the game. You have no fucking experience with any of these new cards. So, Alex, without further ado, I want you to look at a few cards that I have put up on the screen here.
Oh, you're going to tell me if they're good or not.
Yeah, but you're going to tell me first. All right. First card.
Unreveal, Alioth. So 6, 2. So it's a 6 energy, but it's 2 power.
Correct.
Right? Just that I'm reading the card right. Alioth, yes. Says, Unreveal, destroy all unrevealed enemy cards here. So, if you have priority, like we just discussed, you basically, like, let's say you do the Galactus means there's one location left, right?
Right.
So if I play Galactus, but I have priority, I play this card, and my opponent basically skips their last turn. Because all their cards will be blown up before they even have a chance to. Do cards have effects when they're blown up, when they're unrevealed yet? Like if something says when this gets destroyed, like I think there's like a Wolverine that'll just come back stronger, like that just doesn't trigger if the card is unrevealed.
That is correct.
I think this card looks super win more to me. Because like I said, like, yeah, I could see it like with Galactus, but if it's not with Galactus, this is a 6-drop with 2 power, which like 2 power, you can find that on one energy cards.
Mm-hmm.
But it also seems like the type of effect that is so bonkers that if built around correctly, it's completely insane. So, but just because it's 6 power, you need to, I can only see it work with a card like Galactus. It has really low power itself, so if you mess up, you probably lose the game because of the power swings on turn 6. I'm gonna say this is not a good card.
Okay, this is a very good card.
Okay.
This is one of the best cards in the game, and it was even better. So the original version, let me see if I can actually... let me start by saying this. It's in a balanced spot now. It's
like,
good because...
Why is this good?
It's good because you have a lot of cards in the game that are able to generate tempo, just like in Magic or any other card game, right? So you mentioned you can find 2 power for 1. You're absolutely right. That's actually your vanilla stat line. It's a 1-2. Your vanilla stat lines basically goes 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. 5, 9 is actually the vanilla stat line, and then 6, 12 is your vanilla stat line. If you go
Oh
walk
yeah,
those.
like your Hulk, your
exactly.
Wonder
You
Woman
base
or
them off
whatever,
of that.
those are like that, yeah.
So
Wonder
this
Woman
is
DC, but
this is way below the vanilla stat line, but there are plenty of cards that are above rate. You have 1 3s, so you actually have 1 5s now in the game. They have downsides to them, but you have them. You have 2 6s, you have 3 8s, you have 4 10s, right? So you can put this in a deck that is just really good at getting priority, and then when you're winning all your lanes at the end of the game, you just basically say, well, I'm guaranteeing I'm winning this lane, right? And he closes out games. Now, you can whiff, you can miss, you can have games in which you don't want to play Eliath, but he's still very, very good. And he was even better. I think it'll show me the old. So, okay, the old version, the original version that came out was this one here in August of last year.
Oh my god, it just says destroy all enemy cards played here?
Correct. And he was a 6/5.
That is correct. That's
so even if you didn't have priority, right? Even if you didn't have priority, he would flip, and he's like, buy all their cards on that lane.
Unbelievable.
So he was really, really, really good then. But yeah, he's still very good now.
Okay, hold up. Can you scroll down? Why did the changelog rickroll me? The bottom of the changelog just says never going to give you up.
So when this was data mined, they didn't want to give away. So back in August or June.
When they data mined it, they just put this text in.
Yeah, so not to reveal what it was yet.
Okay.
So that's all fun. And it has some great art. This Dan Hibb is awesome.
So I'm still like, obviously I'm not going to doubt that this card is good now that you've explained it to me, but when I first played Marvel Snap, and again I also just played like on low ladder because I didn't go as deep yet, I felt like everybody was like, just like you sort of like dump your hand on the curve, and that usually meant that on like the last turn in the game, you would only have like 1 or 2 just big cards to play to end the game with.
Right.
But then I remember sort of like the high level thing that people started doing was to not do that, so you could react more to what was going on. So is it like more common now in Marvel Snap to just end the game with still like 4 cards in hand, but you were just very tactical with the cards you played, as opposed to just dumping your hand empty and hoping you rip your whole... Like, I remember when I played, like, there's those cards that are like guaranteed to be drawn on a certain turn, right? Was it like Captain Juarez or something, or like that was like the guaranteed?
America Chavez or Chavez. Fun fact about America Chavez: she is no longer a 6/9. She's a 1/2 now,
and it says something entirely different.
She got completely reworked. She's no longer that card that you remember.
Okay, but like I remember that card being kind of decent because if you just barf out your hand, you just want to guarantee drawing a chunky card, even if it's not the biggest card.
It also made your early stuff that you like, the small things you want to play, more likely to be in your hand. Yeah, that's why they got rid of her, because she gave consistency to stuff, and they didn't want her to be an auto-include in decks all the time. If they didn't want the direction of the game to be like that. But it depends on the deck. So like, you have good stuff decks.
There was a guaranteed 2, a guaranteed 3, a guaranteed 4. Like
so that Quicksilver, Quicksilver and Domino are what you're thinking of. The 1/2 that's always in your opening hand, and a 2/3 that's always the second card you draw on turn 2. Those are still in the game. They're still very bad. They're still very bad cards. But yeah, it depends on the deck. You have like some decks like Destroy, like or Discard, where you can play multiple stuff and throw up your hand a lot of turns.
I don't want to look at the screen too much, because then I'm going to see cards in meta decks, and then if you're going to be like, is this card good?
Oh no, these are all decks I played. These are all my decks.
Oh, so they're all bad. Okay, cool.
Yeah, all bad, all bad. So that was Eliath. Next one we have Jean Grey.
Players must play their first card here each turn. So you put her in like the left lane, and now every player, their first card has to be played in that left lane.
Correct.
That immediately strikes me as kind of... Let me finish. Let me cook. It immediately strikes me as kind of bad Because a
Okay.
3 mana, I'm going to say mana, a 3 energy, 3 power card doesn't strike me as super powerful, and the effect is symmetrical. So it's not like, I know like Professor X is like below rate, but I feel like you could really do like some nasty things with that because you could sort of really build around it. But this card feels like it's a nuisance to you and your opponent every turn, but also to you. So like, but you did play an on-rate bad card on turn 3. The only thing I can imagine with this is that you play this with like you take a location and you play like a 1-drop and then play like, I don't know, like a Mr. Sinister and then play this on turn 3, and now that downside doesn't exist for you. I assume if the lane is full, you could just play whatever.
Correct. That's why it says if possible in parentheses.
Oh yeah,
here.
if possible. And like maybe you have like a Nightcrawler there, and then on the last turn of the game you take Nightcrawler out and then put a big card in there. Like you put that 6-drop we talked about just in there, and then you end up winning that lane anyway or something.
Yep.
So I could see that but that feels way too finicky for me. So I'm gonna say this card's probably not good.
Yeah, it's kind of bad. So people thought she was going to be broken because on paper we have cards like the Guardians of the Galaxy. All of them have an effect that says on reveal when your opponent plays here.
Oh yeah, that's right. So you just bait you guarantee that all those cards get their power value, their draw value, their
Correct. Which that's good. There's a card called Kitty Pryde, which she's a 1/1. Every time you play her, the start of the next turn, she comes back to your hand and gains +1 power. So you just continuously play this 1/1 that becomes a 1/2, a 1/3, etc. into Jean Grey, and that's just easy, right?
Yeah.
So there are cards like that seem to work with Jean Grey, but she's a 3/3. You get a weird tempo loss by doing it, and you can have move cards like you said, like Nightcrawler, and there's other move cards you can play with her to kind of like keep filling there. Can she work and can you win with her? Sure, but she's not the best card ever. But if like she was maybe a 2-cost,
was in the right ballpark.
Correct.
Like
you basically
works,
nailed
but
it.
It's too finicky. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I like this card. I like using her. I've tried making her work, and I'm like, you know what? It's not bad. She's not awful, but she's like, she feels average in the deck, and there's something better you could be doing in whatever deck you're trying to do with her.
By the way, one thing I want to point out, and that is what we just talked about with Magic, with like art style and stuff. I do feel like a thing that Marvel Snap does very well is that I feel like every like base version of a card, it's very cohesive.
That's because they're all by the same person.
What? They're all by the same person?
Yeah. Well, hold on, let me see.
They're all by the same person?
Just about. Well, I could be mistaken. Hold on. So yeah, Ryan. Ryan does all the colors on it. Eduardo does. Okay, I'm just going to click on this real quick. So Eduardo, base art, 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 like that. That's not base art. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Almost all of the things he's done have included the base art.
Well, that works, right? In Magic, it's just have a good art director, and in Marvel Snap, it's just have the same person do all the art.
Pretty much. He does a lot of variants too, but I mean, these are at least half of these are the base art of the cards as well. So that's Jean. Next, we have Legion.
On reveal, replace each other location with this one. So I assume just the one you put him on.
Correct.
Did they add more locations since? Like, do they keep adding locations?
There's about 140 locations.
Is there like a rotation between these? I know there was like a location of the week that'll show up more. At least that was a thing.
Yes, that still happens.
Do we have like a pool?
Yeah, there's a rarity to them as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, are all 140 in at the same time, or is it like this week these 30 are in, this week?
No, they're all in. They're all in.
Okay.
At all times.
Under that assumption, because I obviously don't know a lot of locations, I'm going to say this card is just not very good because it could really just be actually, I'm saying that. So my first thought is like there's too many locations and this card is way too random. But we just established that you often end up having a bunch of cards left in your hand because you're playing tactical.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see you know what deck your opponent is playing after a few cards. You see what deck you're playing, and there's like this location where you're sort of like, oh, my deck matching up against my opponent, like I just always win that location. Like, I don't know, my opponent, I'm playing like a flood deck, and my opponent like with Squirrel Girl and that sort of like zoo, like I just fill every lane, and there's like a location that says, wasn't there one that's sort of like the person who has the most units here gets 100 power or something? Like there's one like that.
Yeah, that's Mojo World. So
like, if you have the majority, you basically win. And I can imagine you're playing like a flood deck, and then if a card like Mojo World comes up, that's when you're just like, I'm going to make every location Mojo World, and like the game's free. And given that you probably end up holding cards, I think this card's going to be pretty decent. Maybe there's like a deck that is sort of like, there's such a pool of like 10 locations that my deck is like super favored to win, and if it doesn't show up, I just don't play this card.
Okay, so final answer?
Final answer is it's decent.
Okay, this is one of the better cards in the game.
All right.
It's a very good card. In fact, he's underrated, I would say. He's kind of fallen out of favor in meta decks for a little bit. But that's just because flavor of the week kind of stuff. He's still very, very good. He released as a 5/8. People thought this was an easy skip. The 5/8 proved to be too strong. He got nerfed to a 5/7. The biggest reason why he's very good is because, do you remember Magic, Alex?
Well, I mean, like Magic the Gathering, yes.
No, the card Magic.
No.
So, let's show you Magic. So Magic has Unreveal replace this location with Limbo. Okay? Mm-hmm. But you can't play her after turn 5. When you played the game,
Limbo
she
just
was...
says there is a turn 7, right?
Correct. Limbo says the game is 7 turns now. It's a turn 7.
And you just completely fuck up your opponent by on turn 6, you're like, yeah, there's no Limbo, fuck you.
Right. And on top of that, when you played, she was a 5/3. They changed her to a 3/2 to make her way better. She is much better now, and in a lot more decks that want to have at turn 7, like combo decks. So when you go against those combo decks, Legion just says, yeah, on turn 6, I'm just going to surprise destroy Limbo.
Now, you're saying, like, better, but in what context? Because when I played Marvel Snap, everything was best of 1. But now there's, like, sort of Conquest, right? Where you have, like, a sideboard.
No sideboard.
Or, like... Isn't there, like a format where you play, like, a best of 3 or something?
So Conquest is you have 10 cubes, essentially. And you still wager cubes like normally, but you keep playing games until one person runs out of their 10 cubes.
But you don't... That's not with a sideboard or something.
No
that's
sideboard,
still
no.
Thing in Snap. Oh, okay.
I wish it was, but it's not.
Okay, yeah.
So you can't bring him in.
It's more that he counters like cards that like guarantee a certain location, like that Limbo card, and not like how I was thinking it, like, hey, can I just randomly find the location that's cool and then change the whole game to be that location? Like, that's not really how he's used. It's more like
he's very good generically. That's the thing. He's a very flexible card. It just adds to his stock that there happens to be a card like Magic that you're like, oh, I also just can beat that.
Yeah, and that's like
disrupt my opponent.
Good meta card.
Right. So like
Does this also work against? I don't know if this card still sees play. I know there was Storm that just said like flood this location. You can no longer play cards here. Like,
so that is a combo you can do. So you could go Storm on turn 4, him behind the flooded lane on turn 5, and then all the other lanes on turn 6 are locked. The flooded becomes active. So you could do that. Now you have that,
but also it's a way to counter Storm by like
correct
every location.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Also, this location is hilarious. Bar with no name. Whoever is the least power here wins. So what you can do is
just
play
wait.
nothing. Yeah, you just play nothing, and then on the last turn of the game, you just make them all bar with no name, and then you're like, I win. So
it also just gets a huge amount of cheese factor.
Yep. There's also Collapse Mines, Central Park, like filling your other, like you just, all the other lanes get filled now and stuff.
And is there, like I said, is it, so I guess I should have evaluated higher because of that, where I was like, and if there's none of these things, you just don't play it, and you probably won't run out of stuff to do.
Yeah, and sometimes on the last turn of the game, you're like, okay, I could just play Legion on this lane, and all these locations turning into this location doesn't change anything for either player, neither negative or bad. It's neutral. So I'm just playing a 5/7 now. Yeah. So sometimes he works that way. But yeah.
Yeah. Is that why it matters that they made him from a 5/8 to 5/7? Because that fallback to just play it as a generic card, it's not as good.
Right, and 5/8 is just a pretty good stat line. Because at the time I would argue it was the best stat line in the game because Shang-Chi destroyed 9 power and up. Ah. They did change Shang-Chi to be now he's 10 power and up he destroys. Next.
Haven't been doing that well. Loki. 4 energy for a 5 power card. Unreveal, transform your hand into cards from your opponent's starting deck and give them -1 cost. This card has to be bad, right? You replace your hand, you get a bunch of crap from your opponent. I know it's cheap, but you play it on turn 4, so you only have 2 turns to do... And it's from your opponent's starting deck. Even if you play no other cards, you're gonna... If you play no other cards, you will end up having 7 cards in hand or something, right?
Yeah, the max is 7.
Yeah, so you potentially take half your opponent's deck at random, and then you have 2 turns to beat them with their own deck. Unless there is some... Alright, so I know from in Hearthstone, there is a card called Harvester of Sin, I believe, that just says, whenever you play a card that you copied from your opponent, you steal the original. So, your opponent, you will have, a card that says, get a copy of your opponent's hand, and you play a creature they have, you just steal that creature. Assuming there's nothing like that, where it's just if you have copies from your opponent's hand, you just destroy their whole game plan with it. I'm gonna say this card is bad because I would rather just put a card in my deck that makes me have a plan rather than try and do an imitation of my opponent's plan.
So Loki is an interesting card because
I'm just glad you didn't immediately start with, oh no, this card's broken.
So he's interesting because he is the epitome of skill expression in Snap and in card games. He has the highest skill ceiling of any card you'll ever see, and in the hands of better players, he is arguably the best card in the game. However, if you're bad at the game, you're going to be bad with Loki, because finding and understanding when to play him and when to not rely on Loki is a skill that you need to develop, just like snapping. But he is incredibly strong. But don't worry, every other player, including myself and a lot of other content creators, when this card was originally shown, were like, that looks like a fun card. That's it. It's just a fun little guy. He's a fun card. Guy. Yeah. He was a 3/5, by the way. He was a 3/5 on release.
Then I can see where you've got more time to work with the stuff you've been given. And at that point, I guess too much.
The big thing, though, is that you have a card like Quinjet, which is a 1/2, that says ongoing, cards that did not start in your hand cost 1 less.
Oh, yeah, so okay.
You play Quinjet, and then you play Loki. There's a lot of cards in the game that generate cards and add stuff to your hand.
Barf out your whole hand.
Yeah. So there's Agent 13 that you might be familiar with, one of the older cards, just adds a random card to your hand.
Yeah.
You have you can play Devil Dino in this deck. That is you just have Devil Dino on board, and you have a bunch. The deck wants to add cards to your hand anyway, so it makes Devil Dino good.
Yeah.
And the -1 cost from getting your opponent's stuff is really good. Yes, I get my opponent's deck, and I have to beat them with their deck, but that's kind of easy when their 6 is a 5, or sometimes it's a 4, because I have Quinjet down. And I can just... They might be able to play one big card, but I can play that same big card they just played, plus 2 other cards.
The Magic deck, so it's a 7-turn game, so I have more time.
Surprisingly, no. The deck's way too tight for that. Let me see if I can even just show you a traditional Loki deck. So Loki, Yeah. So this is the Loki deck. Like you have card that adds 2 cards to your hand, card that adds cards to your hand from your opponent's deck, card that steals things from your opponent.
And then just Jeff, that is a generically good card, I think.
Yeah. Agent adds a 4 and a 5 to your hand. Hope cheats on that energy.
Oh, yeah, so also the idea that, like, when you play Loki, your hand's already full, so you're going to get a load of cards from your opponent, and then Quintet makes them super.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That is the idea. So, next up,
Great.
it's Pixie.
Pixie. Cute card. Unreveal. Shuffle the cost of all cards. Wait. Hold up. 2 energy for a 1-drop. On reveal, shuffle the costs of all cards in your deck that started there. So you just like your Loki can be a 1-drop now, but then you draw your I know that's not playable card. You draw your Angel and it's a 4 cost now. Like it just jumbles the costs around of all your cards.
Yes, but it's not swapping costs. So
does it just add up the total number and then just distribute it at random?
It basically what it takes is it basically imagine all the cards in your deck when you play Pixie, and imagine like the costs are stickers. You take all the stickers out and then you put them in a hat and you shuffle the hat around and then you just throw them onto the cards. But they can repeat is the thing. So
if your deck has like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they could all end up costing 2. Like
yes,
the 2
technically
could just, obviously
speaking.
Very unlikely, but like the 2 could just repeat over and over, and now your whole deck costs 2.
Right. So if I draw a 6 cost and after I play Pixie and it's now 1 cost, that does not mean one of my 1 costs is now a 6 cost.
Yeah, that could still be your 6
they
cost.
Could
they
could still be yeah, they could still be 1 cost. They could be 5 costs, whatever.
This looks like a giant fucking meme. Like this is just such a die roll. But the thing that triggers me about it is that, so I'm going to go tangent about another game.
Sure.
So in Hearthstone, there was a card called Yogg-Saron. Hope's End, I think it was called, the tagline. There's like 4 Yogg-Sarons. And he basically said, for every spell you've cast this game, so like instant or sorcery, sort of. In Hearthstone, it's just creatures and spells. Well, you've got other card types now, but creatures and spells is like 95% of the game. And it just says, for every spell you've cast this game, cast a spell at random. Just any spell from any class, any mana, it just barfs random shit out. Which on paper sounds horrible. But then you realize that on average, a random spell is beneficial to you. So just casting 30 spells at random is random bullshit go, but you probably end up on the good end of that.
But those are free, right?
Yeah, all the spells are free. He just casts them at random, and before it was changed, at one point it got changed, where like if he at one point kills himself with a spell, the effect stops. But it didn't do that at first. So there were aggressive decks that were full of spells, and if they didn't win by turn 10, they would just play Yogg and just see whatever happens. And it turned out that it was a fucking meme, but it came out on top, so it was the right thing to do. And that's what I'm now thinking with Pixie, with like the high roll of your 6 costs becoming 1 cost is so high that the games where your 1 costs become 6 costs, like the math lines up that overall it is a good play to make, even though it's a giant meme. That's just gonna be I think that's what it is. It's a giant meme. Sometimes you play this on turn 2 where you automatically lose the game. Sometimes you play this on turn 2 where you automatically win the game. And that happens more often than you lose the game if you build your deck right.
She's bad.
Okay. Yeah.
However, you're not wrong about your evaluation. And I might upset people, I guess, that might watch this and me saying she's bad because they'll be like, well, I do really well with Pixie decks. She's not the reason you do well. I've already talked about this on other things. She's always played in a deck with a card called Hope Summers. Hope Summers is a 3/4 that says when you play a card here, like on top of her location, or each time you play a card here, next turn you get +1 energy. So if I on turn 3 play Hope Summers, and then I go turn 4 play like a 1 cost and a 2 cost on her, On turn 5, I'll have 7 energy.
Yeah.
So it's for each instance.
Yeah.
She's almost always in a Pixie deck. And then if you compare the lists that have Pixie and then look at the lists that don't have Pixie but still have Hope Summers, the ones that have Hope Summers without Pixie actually perform a bit better than with Pixie.
Yeah.
She's you can get high rolls and you can do really dumb stuff. And there's a card called...
But it's more like what I was saying, the high rolls don't actually outweigh the low rolls. And you're just better off doing something else on turn 2.
Right.
Just developing your board, getting more power, adding cards to your hand.
The real curve you want is Mobius on 3. You want Pixie on 2, Mobius on 3, because he says your cost can't be increased, your opponent's cost can't be reduced.
So it can only be benefit. So like that works retroactively. So
right.
if you accidentally turn your 1 into a 6, it'll just be a 1.
Stay at a 1. Yeah.
Yeah, but your 6 will still be a 1 if it was flipped. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Cool.
So that's the dream.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Even with that dream curve, you still have to draw your 6-drop.
Well, and I guess this is what could happen. I don't know if these ongoing effects work in your hand. Can't this just randomly turn Mobius into a 6 and this just never works?
Correct.
Yeah.
No, well, okay, it doesn't change your stuff in your hand though. So if you have Mobius in your hand, but you have this
Pixie
great
is
curve
only in your deck, of course.
Right.
So even the stuff in your hand doesn't matter. So if you already drew your 6, then it's just like, yeah, it sucks to be you. It's already in your hand.
Yeah, and
if it's in your deck, you're like, yeah, you didn't draw it. Sucks to be you. Okay.
If I look at another card that I always compare them together, and I'm like, this is why she's not very good. If we look at Mr. Negative, it's spelt out. I gotta remember that. Mr. Negative, which I'm sure is a card you remember. He is a 4-1 that says swap the power and cost of all cards in your deck. Okay? So here's to the right. To ignore this one on the left. On the right is an actual deck you'll see more often than not. What you do is, because you played things like Iron Man, he's now a 0-5. You play things like Artem Zola and Null. Now they're a 0-6, a 0-6. Mystique is a 0-3 and they're Ironheart 0-3. And guess what? On turn 5, you play Jane Foster. Unreveal. Draw all cards that cost 0 from your deck. So she'll pull the 0-cost Mystique, the 0-cost Iron Man, and all that to your hand. This is a combo deck that you can have a definitive way of like, oh yeah, I dump like your opponent. If you see Jane Foster come down, you leave.
Does what the Pixie deck wants to do.
Right, because the Pixie deck still needs to draw the cards.
But in
at least Mr. Negative has a way to do it.
And I see that the deck has a 49% win rate. Because if you don't draw Mr. Negative, and
you leave.
Thor, these are a bunch of base set cards. Like I have most of these.
Right. So but it does okay with cube rate. Like it's not great, but like that's what this is a combo deck. Yeah. But so is Pixie at the end of the day. But Pixie I will say Pixie decks are better at performing without actually having your amazing Pixie curves and stuff than negative decks are. But
yeah. But that's where Marvel Snap comes in. If you don't draw this, you just leave.
Right. Okay. I got like 3 more after this.
So one thing I have to say about Pixie, and this maybe is what throw me off. This game is designed by Ben Brode, in part, and Ben Brode is absolutely someone who like loves his meme shit and would want this to be good.
Right.
So in a way, it's sort of I feel like he would just tweak this until it's good.
I don't know how big Brode is in the design process anymore because he's the face of the company and stuff. You might know him from Magic because he was a lead designer in Magic and actually designed Lord of the Rings.
Magic? Ben Brode?
Nope.
From Magic?
No.
Oh.
Glenn Jones is the head designer of Marvel Snap. He designed Lord of the Rings, that set. He was the lead designer for Magic for that set, to give you an idea of who he is. And he's now currently the head designer for Marvel Snap.
Yeah, okay, and this random meme shit is stuff we appreciate less in Magic. So if you look at it more from a Magic lens, you would tweak this until it's playable but not good. So people could play their meme deck, but the latter wouldn't be meme decks. Yeah,
but I like Glenn Jones. I think he's great. So, okay, next. This is one of the newest cards in the game. This one actually just came out earlier this week on Tuesday.
If your opponent ends a turn with unspent energy, +4 power, if in hand or in play, so not in your deck. So, I think, coming back again to you often just end up not spending all your energy, because just like playing on a curve is not how you play this game per se. If this card is in your opening hand, I could see this just being like a 6 mana 23. Like, fairly realistically. At least like a 19, but maybe a 23 if you're lucky. Does require it to be in your hand. And I don't know how good it is to just play a big dumb idiot on turn 6, but I think this is already way above rate if it's a 15, right? Yeah, because the Hulk is a 12. Which is
the going rate for the vanilla stat line is that. There are cards that go a bit beyond the vanilla stat line, of course.
Yeah.
But like one example would be like the Infinite. That's a 620 that you will remember, but you have to skip turn 5 to play it.
Yeah, so I remember that card, I think, being pretty decent. So, yeah, an Infinite that doesn't require you to do that, and it's like less telegraphed, because I felt like back then at least, if your opponent skipped turn 5.
Well, there's one important caveat I have to tell you about this card that does not say this on the card. Because we didn't know that this is how it worked until it released. If it's in your hand, and your opponent doesn't spend all their energy,
get an indicator.
It does show your opponent.
Oh, that's
Red Hulk pops up on screen like rah, and then you watch him grow.
Okay,
so
that's huge.
You do alert your opponent that you have Red Hulk.
Yeah. I feel like half of the power of this card, and in a way, it may actually be better that it shows up. In a way, because you get into your opponent's head, right? It's like cycling a sensor, so your opponent thinks they're safe, but you're getting them with the second one in your hand, right? Like,
right.
So I don't know if it's actually at least it would be better for lower rank. It's better that it shows up because your opponent, like completely low rank, it doesn't matter because your opponent doesn't play around anything. Then mid rank, your opponent it gets way too into their head, so it could be good. And I can imagine high rank players do not give a shit. Like they completely know, right? Like no Magic player at the Pro Tour sees a sensor that's cycled and is like, oh, I can play my big card on curve now, right? They know they're still, they look at the deck list, they see there's 4 sensors there, and they're like, yeah, there's another sensor in their hand. So, I'm going to say this card it's basically that. On low ladder, it's probably good because it's just a big dumb... No, on low ladder, people just play on curve because they don't understand the game like I did. So it's going to be small. I think it's like good on mid ladder, and I can imagine on high ladder this is bad.
So, caveat is this is a very new card. It's hard to definitively say like how good it is yet, but early indication is that this is the new best generic 6 cost you put in any deck that wants a 6 cost.
Yeah,
that doesn't care about
generic.
synergy.
So not like the best 6 up in the game, but like the best generic big dude in the game.
It's close. Like if you're in a deck that can like that, okay. If you're in a deck that needs to have a 6 cost be synergistic, which not all of them are. So there's only a handful of decks. Like Apocalypse in discard is one that comes to mind, right? That's a 6 drop. It's synergistic with discard. You want to run it. Or Null. And I guess you can count Death as like a high cost card in Destroy. You're not going to be able to fit Red Hulk in those kind of decks. But in a deck where your synergy stops at like turn 5 and you just want to put in generically strong 6 drop, you're looking at either Magneto, Doctor Doom, and now Red Hulk is probably potentially number 1 out of all of those 3 so far.
So it's just like the stats are so unbelievable that it's good.
I would be shocked if this doesn't get changed at some point to be like a little bit less power gained.
Aren't there like a shitload of cards that will like disable this effect or destroy it when it enters the field, or like because you're just playing a generic big dude and your opponent can see it coming so easily?
Yeah.
Or is it then a matter of like, but it's never like your only play on 6?
Well, you have to. So here's the thing. It doesn't have to be.
Because if I'm just playing like a curve deck, I could also just end the game by playing 2 3s.
Right. So you mentioned mind games. I could be like, yeah, they know about my Red Hulk, and I might be looking to play Red Hulk, but then I can look at the board. I'm like, I think I want to do this play instead, and they might have been gearing up and just trying to slam down Shang-Chi in the lane that you thought, or they thought you'd play Red Hulk to kill it, and then you don't play him. So that does give him stock. But at the end of the day, if you're winning 2 lanes on turn 6 and you're losing 1 lane, you just play big guy in the lane you're losing and force your opponent to be like, okay, you got to win those 2 lanes now.
Yeah,
like that style and that gameplay still works, and he's still pretty good at doing that. We entered
very well.
We entered a meta last year, towards the end of last year, the last few months, of like just big guys go burr. So,
Marvel Snap had its Siege Rhino era.
Basically, yeah. So next is not a big guy. It's not a big girl. Yep, 5/4.
4 Unreveal, destroy each card here with less power than this. Now, there's a few questions I need to know for this. Are there, like, ways to buff cards' power in your hand? Like, pretty reliably? Like, is it just a card that says, like, every card in your hand has, like, 1 more power?
So, yeah, there's a Nakia. She's a 3/3 and says, on reveal, all cards in your hand get +1.
Yeah.
There's Okoye, who's a 2/2, which does the same, but for your deck.
I won't ask for too much, but I just want to... Is that, like, a thing that we do in Snap?
Yes,
And the second one, if you have an ongoing effect that says, like, all your cards here, like... Is it, like, Mr. Fantastic or whatever? That is, like, all your cards here are... No, that's not
Blue
Mr.
Marvel
Fantastic.
is a better example.
Blue Marvel, which is, like, all your cards here have +1 power. Like, how does that work with this? Does it go off the power when you play it, or does it first add up things like Blue Marvel and then decide to kill all other things?
So ongoing effects like Khazar, Blue Marvel, stuff that buff your other cards without actually giving the stats to the cards, if that makes sense. It's like a layer on top. Because the Nakia example I gave you where it adds +1 to your hand, right? Yeah. That actually shows up on your card, and it's like a implemented stat. Whereas Blue Marvel and Khazar are just...
But like, if I have Blue Marvel, would this enter and destroy everything that has basically 4 or less? Because it would now count as a 5.
It counts the Blue Marvel buff. So if a card is at 3 normally, and Blue Marvel puts it at a 4, she won't kill it.
No, but I mean the other way around. So if you make her a 5 with Blue Marvel, would she now kill 4 mana?
Oh, yes, correct.
Yeah, okay. This just
also,
feels like...
I gotta tell you one more niche interaction that might help a little bit, I guess. Mm-hmm. Because we were talking about Blue Marvel. Because Blue Marvel is a 5/3, let's say... Now, this comes down to weird ordering, okay? So let's say you have...
I was thinking but then you blow up your own Blue Marvel if it's in the same.
So if you played in the lane with Blue Marvel and kill the Blue Marvel, if you have cards that existed or that were played after Blue Marvel, I guess, or after that buff would have been given, and you kill the Blue Marvel, that buff gets removed. Now they're eligible to be killed potentially. However,
it sort of fills out the bars. If Blue Marvel's first, it'll destroy Blue Marvel, and then it will check again.
Right, but if
the
Blue
cards
Marvel
are
is
before Blue Marvel, it'll blow those up, then get to Blue Marvel, and then
right, or it'll check to see if it can kill those. Can't because Blue Marvel's buffing them. Kill Blue Marvel, but then those other ones still stay alive because it already attempted to kill them.
Okay, yeah. Now I'm thinking, and this is a thing that I'm thinking out loud. You don't need to answer this, otherwise too much info. But I'm thinking I know that in destroy decks, they play death, and they want to play cards that blow up all their shit like Carnage, and then that way your death is cheap. I can imagine you just want more of that to have consistency. So you might want to use this to blow up your own cards. But on the other hand, it also interacts with your opponent. So I could see this being a huge blowout. And then if you're playing a deck that cares about destroying its own cards, it even advances your game plan. So But it is a 5-drop, which feels like... Obviously, I don't know, but to me, turn 5 feels like super important in Snap, because it like sets you up for like, you know, it sort of determines what does the board look like now going into, you know, do I play my Red Hulk, do I play my 2/3s, you know, at this point lanes will be locked out, you know for sure if there's going to be 7 turns in the game or not. Well, other than like the thing that disables it and it's like, fuck you, no turn 7. But like, so I feel like turn 5 is very important, so maybe this card like was a 4 and it was way too good and they made it a 5 to like play into that. I'm still gonna say this card is good. I think this card is good, and if I want to go bonus points, see if I can hit the bullseye, like this card was broken and had to be nerfed, and now it's like decent. But I think this card's pretty good.
Okay, so final answer is good.
Good card.
One of the worst cards in the game.
I am bad at evaluating Marvel Snap cards, man. I don't have enough context. This is just... damn.
It's
it's
so
such a different game.
Yeah, it is a... So, and it's really funny they went for the bullseye because the exact opposite happened. She released as a 5/3, and they buffed her to a 5/4, and she's still bad.
Oh. So I tried to go for the bullseye, and I threw the dart to my own foot. No, I get it.
So the reason she's bad is because it's too late in the game, and if you want to kill certain stuff, then there are better ways to do it. Like the targets you want to hit with her. There's only one target that's actually like for consideration, and that's Dracula. Dracula is a 4/1 that says at the end of the game, discard a card in your hand. He gains that power. So great in discard, right? She's amazing against Dracula. But that's kind of where everything starts and stops. The other cards that she's good against, there's a card called Black Knight. That's a 1/2. It says when you discard a card, create an ebony blade in your hand that has the same power. So you can discard an Infinite and get a 4/20 out of it. The problem is like that would be great against Black Knight, but by turn 5, they've already discarded a card and they've already gotten the value out of Black Knight. So it's too late to do anything. And as far as like, and the same thing with like Iron Man, he's a 5/0. He comes down the turn that she comes down. You have to call it. So, and then at that point, you can just play things like Enchantress or Rogue to get rid of the Iron Man ability. Yeah. And then the other side for your own stuff, the cards you want to blow up on your side, you can just do that in a more efficient way with the cards we already have, like Carnage, Venom, and Deathlock.
Yeah.
Or Killmonger, if we're talking about like Deadpool. And Deadpool grows, so by the time turn 5 rolls around, if you can kill your Deadpool with this, then you're too far behind.
Yeah.
So she's very she's actually, this is her scene percentage according to Snap.fan.
Yeah.
Less than 1%.
She's not seen a lot, but her win rate when played, drawn, or in the deck is actually kind of decent.
It's just above 50.
Not high, but I mean, like, I wouldn't call it worst card in the game if it's 50-50.
No, it's not the worst card in the game. It's just a bad card. It's just inefficient. Great pixel though. Great pixel. Look at that. Like I want her to be good. Also, originally data mine she was a 6/4. So
yeah, but she did have a different effect, which looks a lot better.
Right. It's just, but like, and if you want to kill things, Shang-Chi's just better at doing it. I hope she goes to a 4 cost at some point, but she probably
because
won't.
like, would this be like a good 4?
It might be.
What I was saying with like the idea that like turn, because I guess I just didn't evaluate that enough, because I did think like maybe turn 5 is like too important of a turn to be doing this, which I guess is right, but I just thought it wasn't as important.
Yeah, if she was a 4,
comes down early.
If she was a 4, she might be broken as like a 4/4 because there's a card called Zabu, which is a 2/2 that makes all your 4s cost 1 less.
Oh yeah, so you play this as a 3 and just
right, which is why you can't make anything 4 cost anymore.
Zabu.
Yeah, that's a problem. Okay, 2 more.
Oh dear. Oh, this is going to be another one of those funky cards. It's a 0 power card. 2 energy, 0 power. Unreveal, move one of your other Unreveal cards here. Wait. move one of your other Unreveal cards here to the middle location. Its ability happens again.
So I'll
What
paint
if
you a
the
picture.
card's already in the middle and I play Grandmaster? Does it just trigger again, or does it then not do anything?
It just doesn't do anything because the criteria it has to move to the middle for it to work.
Okay.
So you play him on either flank, so either the left or the right lane, where you have an on-reveal card already there, and then he will move one of them at random. So if there's only one card, then you guarantee you hit that one card. If there's 3 other on-reveals, he'll randomly pick one and move it to the middle, and that on-reveal occurs again.
And if I go on turn 6, I play a 4-mana on reveal and this. Does it like the 4 trigger, this guy trigger, moves it, it triggers again? Could I have like
Correct.
a 4 trigger twice on turn 6?
Correct.
That makes me think this card is good, because there is like, what is the like Changji or whatever you said, that like destroys big cards? Like there's a bunch of cards that will just like destroy big cards or like destroy reveal cards. This is like
Yep.
probably the craziest card to copy with Loki, because you're like, oh thanks. it's 0 now with the other card.
Well, the
but you can just copy your
Quinjet's minimum 1, but so he'll only go to 1.
Yeah. It makes me think this card's probably pretty good. I can imagine the blowouts with this card are like unbelievable. Where like you just like play another card to like wipe your opponent's location and then like wipe all their progress and then, oh, by the way, I'll do it again in the middle. So I'm gonna say this card could be like too clever for its own good, and it is bad. But I'm gonna say this card is good.
Grandmaster's a really tough one to evaluate because on paper it looks like a card that just should be kind of like almost broken. But in practice, we haven't really gotten a deck with him yet that really makes him go, like, make you go, oh, he's insane.
But
He's
like
always just like
the sort of zeitgeist is still like this card will at one point be.
that's the
broken.
the opinion that people have. Like this is a wait and see card, but it's also been out for a few months now. As it stands right now, it's not very good. Today in Marvel Snap right now, it's just not played. It's not good. Because I think a 2-0, you need to be doing something extraordinary. Now you did nail it on the head though. The blowout plays with this card are insane. You could do turn 3 wave, which makes all your all cards that are 6 or 5 go down to 4. Turn 3 wave, turn 4 Eliath, that destroys all their stuff. Turn 5 Absorbing Man, copy Eliath's ability, do it again, and then turn 6 play this. Or you could do the same thing where you could ramp, turn 5 Eliath, turn 6 Absorbing Man plus this.
Yeah.
So like that, and I've done that, and it's insane, and it feels amazing. But that doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
So like, and also again, this is a card that everyone thought was broken. On like everyone, like this was one of the most overhyped cards ever released, and it
like,
just kind of.
It does feel like you make this a 1, it's broken. You give this any amount of power, it's broken.
Right. I'd like to see it tried as a 2-1.
Yeah,
But
just
like
so it could like swing something. Like it could,
right. Because like let's say like Shang-Chi, for example. Let's say you Shang-Chi plus this on the last turn. Shang-Chi at 3 power isn't a lot, but sometimes that is the difference. Because you kill a big thing and then you beat their small thing. But like if you the Shang-Chi after you play Grandmaster on that will move to the middle lane, and then you're left with a 2-0. That's not adding anything to that.
Yeah, it moves it. Obviously, it doesn't copy it, so you do like wipe
Right.
it guard, and like you potentially lose the lane you play the Grandmaster in. Yeah.
Now, if this card said it moved itself to the middle lane and copied that on reveal, then maybe it'd be better. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But then you lose. There are some fringe cases where you have a place like Sanctum Sanctorum in the middle where cards can't be played there. So you move this to an unplayable lane and you get the free power. Like that happens.
Yeah.
All right, last card, Alex.
Oh dear. Gladiator. 3 energy for an 8 power card, so it's gonna have to have a downside. On reveal, add a card from your opponent's deck to their side of this location. If it has less power, destroy it. So, for the record, you play you play this on the the middle lane, and you pull out there, that 6-drop we talked about first. It's just like, oh, it's got 2 power, cool story, bro, and you just like clap it.
Yep.
But if you do this, your opponent plays their Hulk, you just gave them a Hulk for free.
Correct.
Now, you were just talking about, like, big cards go burr being the meta for a while. And I would say in that meta, this card isn't very good. But on the other hand, 8 power is so high that I feel like this just outmatches, like, the vast majority of cards in the game. So, if you pull a random card from your opponent's deck... It says it adds it to their side of the field. So if you pull like a Storm, do they still get the effect from Storm?
They do.
Oh, okay,
Reveals still
do.
occur.
Okay,
If there's an ongoing effect that happens, like let's say you pull Blue Marvel, the Blue Marvel effect while he's there does disperse.
Yeah.
Now in that case, you would kill the Blue Marvel, and then it would go away. But that's just
but like that's sort of.
I guess a better example would be if you pulled an armor, the 2/3 that says cards here can't be destroyed. The armor would expand, and then it wouldn't be able to be destroyed because it's now in the armor.
Yeah.
So.
The fact that it still gives... I first thought if it just pulled it out and he just matched it in raw stats, like I feel like 8 power, like again, just beats like 90% of cards that see play. But the fact that it takes on reveals, and there's a bunch of really devastating on reveals, makes me think that this... So, this reminds me of... there's cards in Hearthstone that do this. Like, the most famous one is Dirty Rat, which is a 2-mana 2/6, which is like, that's an above stat line, like far above stat line, at least defensively. And it just pulls a card from your opponent's hand, and it doesn't trigger on reveals, battle cries in that case. And that card is like, it was bad, but like historically it's actually a really good card because of that disruptive element. But sometimes you just pull your opponent's card from their deck, and even though they don't get the battle cry, you just gave them a bunch of stats and they just beat you over the head with that. But I feel like in that card, the fact that it stops on reveals is super, like, that's why it's good. And this guy is still giving your opponent the on reveal. I can imagine it also just leads to really fucky games. You pull your opponent's Storm on turn 3 and just both players are like, well, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Well, in all fairness to that, Storm is a 3 cost, so that's the turn she'd come out anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah. But like some card with it. If I know you pull out your opponent's like Galactus and you're just like, oops.
Well, Galactus is worse now. Galactus has to be winning the lane to go off.
Oh, okay. He doesn't.
They
just
changed
blow
him.
up the lane.
An example that would be like a fuck kind of option would be like, I guess, something that generates a token. So White Tiger would be one.
Yeah.
Doctor Doom would be another. Those would be like those kind. You're the kind of scenario you're painting.
Kind of think of some of the other cards I've seen. This is so hard, man. I know this is either going to be unplayable or like in every deck.
Yeah, I tried to pick cards that kind of gave that vibe.
You didn't make it easy on. You didn't go easy.
I saved
like that.
I saved one of the harder ones for last.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that this card is not good because you just mess yourself up with unreveals too often.
So final answer, not good.
Yeah, final answer is not good.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
It is pretty good. It's not broken. It's not obscene. It's not insane. Because all the things you said in your evaluation are accurate and correct. Sometimes you just pull a big card and you go, well, that kind of fucking
Well,
sucks.
bye.
Yeah, you just leave. Like, I'll put it this way.
I will say that is like a very big factor that I keep not thinking about. If you do this and you pull a big card, you just leave.
Right.
Like, which is
you just
a
retreat.
mechanic in Hearthstone, in Snap, to just be like, oh, I got unlucky. Bye.
There's a player that's the closest thing, like one of the closest things to like a pro player we have. It's Lambie. You might be familiar with him. He was a big Hearthstone player for a while. Like a pro player there. He ended up in I think he finished 4th in Worlds at Hearthstone a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
Or no, I think he might be a champion. He finished 4th in Yu-Gi-Oh! Worlds. That's what it was. He also played Yu-Gi-Oh! So he has a great thing on this. It's a very simple quote. Some people are like, what happens if he pulls a bad card? Like, doesn't it make him bad? And he's like, you can just retreat. If Gladiator fucks you over, you just leave. Just retreat. Have you thought about retreating? That's an option. But there are vast majority of the cards in the game are going to be underneath his stats. If you pull Cosmo, gone. You pull Eliath, gone. He also just gives information to your opponent's deck as well. And there are certain matchups he's free. And I mean literal free. So let's look at
there's just a load of matchups where nothing beats this.
Correct. So let's look at Destroy, for example.
The
turn
literal
3
only card it doesn't beat his death.
Yeah, and even Null, who grows based on what's been destroyed, on turn 3, there's a very good chance he's not big enough yet.
Yeah.
Now, X-23 and Wolverine, a little awkward, but sometimes your opponent plays a big Venom, and then you just play Gladiator, and you pull a Carnage or a Deathlock, and you're like, your Venom's gone. Another thing would be, where are we at? Surfer, like Silver Surfer. This kills pretty much everything in the list. Sarah's one of the best cards in the game, a 5/4 that gives your everything in your hand minimum 1 less. She's a great setup card. Lockdown hits a lot of stuff. Hits Miss Marvel, who's a really good card. Nebula, Medusa, Zabu, Jeff. It hits Doctor Doom, but
Medusa is like a good. That's just like you playing in the middle. Oh, okay, that used to be a 4.
Yeah, now she's a 2/5, so she's good now. A big one. Also, I mean, this one is really good. Just this is all like just above rate statted stuff. 2/5, a 3/5, 2/0 that grows. Patriot again kills pretty much everything there. Iron Man is another example. There was one that I wanted to talk about. Oh, Loki. That's the big one. Loki's a very good deck, but look, everything dies to it. He kills everything. Now, look, you give them the Loki and it flips, but sometimes you give them the Loki
you give
too
them the
early.
Loki when they only have 3 cards in hand, and it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, and also like ignore this version because it's an Agatha, but Zoo, like Khazar Zoo with like 1 cost, stuff like that, like
what
that.
What does Agatha do again?
She just starts in the game, starts in your opening hand, and then plays for you.
That's just a bot.
Yeah.
Like,
she's very bad.
So you put Agatha in your deck, you just don't play. You just watch the game play.
Correct.
That is arguably the worst design I have ever seen in my life.
And on top of that, 2 things. One,
she's probably also bad at the game, so she probably
because there's no rhyme or reason to what they do.
Yeah.
Bots are random. They play randomly. They don't have intelligence. They just pure randomness.
Again, this is the stupidest card I've ever seen. This is
on top of which
this turns your game into one of those AFK games where it's like AFK Arena. The great thing about this game is that you don't have to play it.
The reason this has 13,000 plays, this deck, and that's just one Agatha deck, there's a lot of them, is because people will just do that and go AFK, and for every game that you play, you get XP towards your season pass.
I could just sit here like while working and just go like game.
You have to hit end turn at the very least.
Oh, okay.
But so you have to at least kind of be enough attention.
in a meeting pretending to work, and pay 95% attention to the meeting, and the other 5 just going like, yep. And at the end of the day, you could be like, well, shit, got a few cards. That's the only reason this card sees play, right?
Correct. It's post-infinite season pass farming for XP. You can't even farm boosters with her because a fun little quirky thing about Agatha is she gets all the boosters every time. So, at the end of the game, when you finish the game, it's like, oh, random card in your deck got boosters that you use to upgrade the card and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Agatha gets them all.
Even when she's like fully, you've got the super duper version.
Yeah. It's just a design choice they did for her. Again, I think it's so you can't AFK farm boosters. I think that's the idea.
I get that, but I mean, like this is actually just the worst designed card I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, oh, it was Agatha all along, because it's really funny from your opponent's perspective of like turn 6 rolls around and then Agatha plays herself. Yeah. Also,
so she always plays herself on turn 6, just to feel like it was me all along.
The only thing about Agatha that is an intelligent design is the fact that she, if the option's available, will always choose to play herself. She holds herself on the highest priority. So, the way you used to make Agatha decks, if you actually want to be competitive, is you would play like Wave or like Lady Sif, or like to discard her, or Wave to ramp into her, so she'll play herself, and then you can actually take over and play now. And then you ramped into a 6/14. They were still bad.
Like, discard a card like that Ebon Knight guy, and you just like you replaced Agatha with a really big card, but now you actually get to play the game.
Right. So yeah, that's
okay. That is actually clever. So like when she dies, she stops playing the game for you.
Correct. So if you discard her or you ramp her, she's gone.
That is actually kind of funny. That makes it not the worst card ever, but pretty close.
It's still pretty bad. It's like a novelty, and the novelty, in my opinion, wears off pretty quickly.
Yeah, like this does feel like you could watch like a YouTube short of entertainment, and then you've just kind of had it. And because other than that, you're playing the game. You're painstakingly unlocking your Season 3 cards, and you get Agatha, you're like, this was literally not a card, and you move on.
Yeah, I've done like some streams where I play Agatha, and the stream basically consists of me going, why? Why are you playing there? Stop!
But isn't there, hold up, but the other thing is it was like Snap on Ego or something, right? Like Ego plays the game for you too, right?
Yeah, but Ego's fucking funny because it's it's an ultra rare location. It's super rare, it comes up randomly, and it controls both players. So it's a respect thing of like fist bump, snap. Come on, let's put all our chips in the table for Ego to fuck up our day. Because Ego's hilarious. Now, if you get a turn 1 Ego, it's the greatest thing ever. You're like, oh yeah. And sometimes it just works out and he just plays perfectly, and I'm like, oh, how did you know? Ego, what are you doing? Winning me the game.
I would be playing and Ego would pop up and it would make plays, thinking like, that's better than what I would have come up with.
Right. Holy shit, he's so smart. Fun. So you remember Adrian? We had him on the Barbers a few times. So he's hit Infinite a handful of times. He pretty much only plays Destroy. That's his favorite deck. He did not know how Priority worked until like a month ago. He's been playing since
Did he
launch.
learn it from Ego?
He learned it from me because he was complaining about Eliath, the card that he hates. He's like, they just got lucky and they got the Priority. And I was like, no, they have to work for Priority. He's like, what do you mean? Like, well, if you're winning that turn and you have more points than your opponent does at any given turn, that's who determines who has priority as the game goes along. And he's like, you're fucking lying to me. And he's like, that explains so fucking much. And I'm like, you hit Infinite. That's impressive without knowing priority. That's actually impressive.
Yeah, but I assume, isn't Destroy just a deck that's just like big number go brr, but then
pretty
with a few
much,
more steps?
right. It's like, I have
played
Deadpool.
It a little bit. It was great.
Yeah, Destroy's still one of the top decks because it's just good. But God, is it boring to play after a while. But like when you go against a Destroy player, that's the player that has like all of like the all inked crackle splits and like the best looking variants and stuff. Because it's like it's always Destroy and discard players that dedicate their lives to getting great splits on cards. But yeah, that's how it works. I think you did okay. I think your evaluation of most of the cards was pretty spot on. It's just,
I
they
drew the
were
wrong conclusion.
right, but that's also you're basing your experience off Hearthstone and Magic, and it's a harder thing to do with a game you don't know about.
Yeah, I always thought with Marvel Snap, my problem, completely understand that it's part of the game, but I always felt like that conceding being a tactical thing, being part of the game, was what put me off the game.
Yeah.
Because just the idea that, like, I want to go for that, like, lucky draw, for that, like, exciting, like, oh, I'll just generate a random card, and, like, maybe that'll get me out. And, like, that's sort of... like, it's something I would appreciate less in Magic, because, like, it's sort of more serious. But when I'm playing, like, a mobile game, I'm kind of, like, want to go, like, yeah, I'll just go for the fucking Hail Mary, right? See how it works out. And the fact that Marvel Snap discourages you doing that is what, like, put me off a little bit. But the rest of the game, I find to be a great game. And the way you get your collection sucked.
Correct.
This is a problem I have with basically every game nowadays, because there's a bunch of games like League of Legends, even though I haven't touched League of Legends in like a year, but League of Legends, Hearthstone, to a lesser extent, I don't have that much stuff on Hearthstone, but like, I could go to a game and be like, I can just play with the stuff I want to play with, and there's too many games where I start now and it expects me to play the game for 150 hours before I can do what I want.
Yep.
And Marvel Snap really has that. Like, if they would, I said this before, if they would let me just pay $20 to just get all the shit that they have now and just start making decks and trying shit, I would play so much Marvel Snap. But because I keep having to play, like, I had already played the game and I played like 30 hours of like Zoo and Destroy with 5 cards missing that I want. And that just gets super boring when you're in the same series and your opponent plays that card that you haven't gotten yet. And you're just like, yeah, I just lost because you got your cards in a better order.
Yeah, the Series 3 climb is always really awkward because it's like, it's really basically Series 2.5 for the most part until you're Series 3 complete. Because it's just like, I have X amount of cards, but I'm missing so many that finish this deck. I have like 6 uncompleted decks.
Exactly.
And
there's
that always
no
feels
way
bad.
to... Well, and there is a way to throw money at it, but you have to throw such unbelievable amounts of money at it that, like, I'm not going to spend fucking $200 on a game like this, right?
Right.
I'll give
and
you
especially
10, I'll give
when
you 20. But
the
other
value
than
that they value like new cards at Series 5 is around $50 per card.
$50 for a card. It is a digital pixel thing. I don't own anything. It's like a fucking NFT. Like,
yeah, and I'm serious. The only reason I'm collection complete, like I have every card in the game, is because I stream it all day.
yeah, you play this game a shitload.
I have like 500 hours just on the Steam version of the game. That doesn't even count mobile.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like, yeah, I do like the game. It's just that I would have still been playing Snap probably, and I would have probably played a lot of it if getting the collections wasn't such a painstakingly awful process.